Hello everybody, and welcome to the next event in the Let's Do It in the Cloud webinar series. Every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, guest presenters from Agile Solutions, Dell Boomi, IDC, SafeNet, Think Strategies, and Zuora will walk you through tips, tricks, and best practices for conquering some of the most challenging obstacles associated with cloud service delivery. My name is Michelle Nerlinger, and I'll be your moderator. Today we are very excited to be joined by Eileen Berger, President of Agile Solutions, the leading provider of software development services for companies in the business of building software products. Today, Eileen will be discussing the key planning, architectural design, and implementation considerations for moving an on-premise product to the cloud. With several successful client migrations under her belt, Eileen will use real case studies to highlight cloud service rollout best practices, including lessons learned that you can't afford to miss. At the end of the presentation, Eileen will be joined by Shlomo Weiss, Head of SafeNet Business Development for the company's Software Monetization Division. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that questions can be submitted at any time during the live webcast. Simply click the questions button on your screen and enter your question. We will answer the questions at the end of our webcast during Q&A. Eileen and Shlomo will both have visibility to the questions coming in throughout the course of the webinar. So we do encourage you to use this feature to not only ask questions, but to share your experiences to help guide the direction of the dialogue. For those of you social media users on the line, we encourage you to join the conversation on Twitter and to please use the hashtag LDIITC, short for Let's Do It in the Cloud, so we can address your questions and comments real time throughout the event. Finally, since we always get this question, yes, the presentation will be made available via SlideShare after the event, and all folks can view the on-demand replay anytime via BrightTalk. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Eileen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks to all of you for attending today. So my focus today is on ISVs moving their current on-premise products to on-demand or software as a service. This presentation discusses the key development, planning, and design considerations. And at the end, as Michelle said, I will offer a case study for an evolutionary approach to moving to the cloud. So as you can see on this first slide, there's a number of things that you really have to think about when you're moving from on-premise to on-demand. For instance, what are your business objectives? You've got to start there to really understand what you're trying to do. What's the licensing model that you want to do? How are you going to make money on this? What are some of the new features that you may want to put in, or what are some of the old features that you may want to take out? And how can you leverage your current product? Is there anything in there that's leverageable or that you want to leverage going forward? Some of the technology considerations are around modularity, security, multi-tenancy, and scalability, and all of those need to be addressed. So first of all, I want to go through the levels of SaaS maturity, because with these levels, 1 through 4, it actually is a way that you could possibly evolve from where you are today to a full SaaS multi-tenant model. So first of all, level 1, each client will have access to your software via the internet, but each customer still has its own instance of the product and database. So this is kind of a small step toward becoming SaaS. There still isn't any multi-tenancy, and there's minimum configurability, and there may be custom code. Level 2 still shows one instance of the product per customer, but this time each of those instances is the same code, and the product is now configurable. And what's also notable at this is that there really will be no custom code for each of those clients. Level 3 is where we start seeing the multi-tenancy and being multi-tenant efficient, where you have a single instance of the product serving multiple tenants, but not necessarily a multi-database. It's a single database or even one database per tenant at this juncture. And level 4 is the full multi-tenant, fully scalable, configurable, and fully SaaS is where you'd be at number 4. And so it really is a multi-tier architecture supporting a load-balanced farm of identical apps, serving multiple tenants and running on a variable number of servers. Capacity can be changed dynamically to match demand without changing any of the system architecture. And of course, even at this level, it's fully configurable. So let's now look at the different software layers for being SaaS. And this is a real typical multi-tiered architecture. So where you have, first of all, at the top layer is the user interface layer, or the branding, where branding for each customer can occur if that's what you want to offer your clients. And this really represents how the user interacts with the system via browser or possibly even a thin client. The second layer is what we call the business logic or services layer. And this is the logic that represents the customer's workflow, security access, business services such as the billing, provisioning, reporting, licensing. These things are in this layer. And then finally, the data layer, the third layer. And this ensures that you have proper partitioning of the data per customer, that no data bleeds over between customers. And even at this level, you can have custom data fields for each of those customers, but it's still all residing in the one database. So now what about the architecture and what are its characteristics? So here are 4 key characteristics of the software architecture. First of all, it needs to be configurable, and it needs to be configurable to each of the tenants' needs. And this is generally supported by metadata, and this allows different tenants to have different branding, different workflows, access to various parts of the application, and specific data, tables, and fields. This is also where you might see the internationalization and localization if this is an international product. And the configuration starts here at the UI, but it really goes all the way down through all of the other layers. The next one is multi-tenant efficiency. And this efficiency really does derive from sharing those key layers of the application architecture, like the business logic, security, and data among all the tenants, while still maintaining isolation between them. This requires upfront design or often complete redesign of an existing application depending on the suitability of the current design. And this ensures that multiple objectives can be achieved within all the same components. And this still also allows custom business logic for each client. The third characteristic is scalability. One of the major drivers of SaaS is to reach a broader range of clients, all supported on the same application infrastructure. This requires very careful design in the application's building blocks, such as the components, the data access, and the database, so you can scale out in addition to up, and so that the components are truly independent and can be deployed in a multiply parallel fashion to achieve performance objectives. And finally, the last characteristic is it's got to have an operable layer, business services layer. Because SaaS is not only a different architecture, but it's a different business architecture. And so that has to be designed into the product from the beginning. A SaaS business requires operational support systems to allow the application to be deployed and managed. And these support systems are required to ensure that customers can be supported and billed, and the code has to be instrumented to be able to do this in the product. So next we're going to look at the key factors of SaaS enablement, and first of all starting with planning. And business and project planning are very key to start with, because you've got to really start with what are those business objectives, including how are you going to make money, how are you going to license, what are you going to do around that. You need to look at the current product and how that is possibly going to be leveraged, and what skills might be needed to move forward in this project, and you have to look at what sort of incremental project plan that you would like to have. Next is the architectural planning, where you have to really think about what does it mean in your architecture to support multi-tenancy. What about scalability and all the manageability considerations, a number of things that you may not have thought about when the original product was architected. And then what will be the technical approach to your product and the use, if any, of your current product. You also have to look at your development processes and your service processes. Your development processes need to be flexible for requirements, change management, development, testing, because as we all know, when we're doing development, flexibility is the key. If you can't handle different changes to your requirements, then you're going to be really in trouble moving forward. You also need to understand, what is the customer service model going to look like? How are you going to really support this? And is it different than what you're doing today? And I have to say that most likely it will be different. You have to really understand what it is that you're trying to do. Do you really want to do everything that you're currently offering, or are you going to target it just a little bit differently? So again, this goes back to your business objectives. What are you really trying to do here? And so the business objectives will be able to help you decide whether or not you really want to provide the entire product that you already have or not. And you need to also look at the modernization of your user interface. A number of clients that we talk to have had products that are like 20, 25 years old, and it's very clear that they need to modernize their user interface and provide the right kind of experience for today's audience. And then you have to think about, do I want to add more to this product? Who am I really trying to get to in this product? The next thing is the infrastructure migration. So what infrastructure is going to be needed for your SaaS product? It will definitely be different than what you're doing today. So you need to look at a more flexible and much more maintainable infrastructure for on-demand products. And finally, you need to think about your existing product support. One of the things that's very key for all the clients that we talk to in moving from on-premise to on-demand is the realization that the existing product cannot stand still. That has to still be moving forward in some form, either through an evolution to SaaS or just two different development cycles, one for the existing product and one for the new development. So you have to figure out how are you going to balance those resources between the existing product and the SaaS development. So one of the questions as you're looking at your, you've got your plans, you're understanding your business objectives. What should you do? Should you evolve from where you are with your current product, or should you develop a new one? So from the evolutionary point of view, you evolve from where you are. A lot of the things that we've seen with our clients is they tend to decide to evolve if they're really primarily targeting the same market, but they want to modernize, they want to do it on demand. They see no really major changes to their business or workflow of the product, and their architecture is suitable to moving. And so in this case, with evolution, you can develop sort of incremental or evolutionary product plans, and we'll see an example of this as the case study that I'll be showing you in a few minutes. On the other hand, on the revolutionary side, what we've seen is people deciding to develop a completely new on-demand product is they've decided to go for a new target market. In general, most of the people we've talked to is they say we would like to broaden our market by going down to a smaller set of businesses who can't afford what we have today, the licensing we have today, and we want to try to dominate that market and get into there. And so that usually means they have to really think closely about what features they want. Is it everything? And a number of our clients have said, no, it really isn't everything. But then again, they also know that there are certain characteristics of those other markets where they have to add some features as well. And every one of them we've worked with so far has decided that they really have to modernize both their user experience and their workflow. And a number of them do also realize that their architecture, particularly some of these older products, it's really unsuitable and be very difficult to move forward with what they have. And so at this point in time, if you're going to develop a new product, it's no different than developing any new product. And you have to go through all of the same steps of developing the product, keeping in mind, of course, that the product will be a SaaS product and will need all the infrastructure concerns and all of those things that would have been different from your current product. So next one I'm going to go through is the example, okay, of a case study, where basically we have a company that we were dealing with that provided retail software for small and mid-sized retailers, and they have point-of-sale systems and the whole retail solution for companies. And they wanted to migrate their current product to on-premise product to be on-demand because they actually wanted to deliver a different price point and try to pull in more retailers into their solution. And so as we dealt with them, we looked at their needs first. And so the first thing we talked about was what were their business needs. And what they said was, we want to grow the business in the mid-market with a SaaS product. We want to reach people that we haven't reached before. And we feel like we have to do this as soon as possible. So ASAP was the big word with them. Next, we looked at the product development needs, and with those product development needs, what they said was, we really don't know how to go to SaaS. We don't know what it means architecturally. We don't know what it means business-wise. And in addition, in moving to SaaS, we do not have any resources that we feel that can develop the product because those resources are busy with the current product. The third thing in looking at it, their needs, it was their current product technologies. As you can see from this, their current technologies are kind of old. And so you have Delphi as their development environment, Crystal Reports, and SharePoint. And so they wanted to, one of the things they wanted to do was kind of modernize from there, use something that is more up to date. And then these are the priorities that they gave us. They had one high priority objective, and that was basically ASAP. Launch this product as quickly as they can, or launch some product as quickly as they can to start capturing market share. Their lower priorities, but still important, were to move to up-to-date technology, improve the software's extensibility for their partners, improve the user interface and functionality, and support product segmentation or modular deployment of their product. Some of the assumptions that we used in helping them put together their plan were that they wanted to leverage their existing product as much as possible and keep as much of the design, some of the code if they could, and reuse what they already had as a stateless architecture, which if you recall the picture of the architecture, that's a very key point in SaaS architecture. They wanted to go Microsoft because they already had some of their product in Microsoft and they had some skills in Microsoft. They wanted to target simpler businesses at launch, so that way they could think about limiting some of the functionality, although they felt it probably meant most of the functionality. They still said, okay, it will be fine to use professional services for deployment, so that again said it didn't have to be fully SaaS to start out. And they wanted to change the current user interface for their product, and they wanted to provide a very rich user experience for this new set of customers that they were targeting. So, with all of that, and working with them as to what they needed, Microsoft, I think we would have all guessed, is what they chose. And looking at would Microsoft really work for their solution, it did appear that Microsoft was robust enough to be able to work with it for their solution. And it also gave them a way to be able to support this going forward because it's easier for them to then add to their staff to once this was developed, to support it going forward. So Microsoft was definitely their choice. So next we'll look at their architecture and how they are planning to evolve. So this was one where we really helped them put together their roadmap of their architecture and the steps to take to evolve. And then what you'll see after this is how this maps out to a release plan and a release roadmap for the next 2 or 3 years. So first of all, this is their current architecture. So as you can see that it is already somewhat modular. Across the top, the Delphi is their core product, the product that they've had around for a few years, with Delphi pretty much all the way, but it had a SQL Server database. And then what they did was they added an e-commerce product that they basically wrote that in Microsoft, so browser-based, using ASP.NET and Windows Communication Foundation services. And they were hooked up to the Delphi business objects and data objects through some .NET wrappers. And so what they did there, as you can see, it's a real evolution, is they kept the whole business objects and data layer the same, but through .NET wrappers allowed the new e-commerce product to use all of that same. And so given all of that, the future product, the first step, would be to rewrite all of what they needed in terms of the front end, the communications, again in Microsoft, and with the new functionality they needed, with the SaaS architecture as they needed it, and continue to hook up to the .NET wrapper, so they wouldn't need to rewrite everything from scratch. It would do it pieces at a time. And finally, they would rewrite the whole back end in Microsoft. And then in their future product would be a completely Microsoft solution and architected for SaaS all the way across. And so that was really the evolution of their architecture, and that would actually map to what their release plans are. So the next set of slides will really show you how that does map to their release plan and and the evolution that was planned for their product. So first of all, what they saw is they wanted what we suggested in this release plan is first of all web-enable the product, and that would be the first I'll call it maturity level 1 product that they could say was SaaS. And so in this case, they would do, the new web UI enhancements, still using the current Delphi business objects and data access objects. They would have customizability in here, data integrations with maybe some offline point-of-sale systems, and they would migrate from Crystal Reports to web reporting, and it would still include SharePoint. You can see that's really, the line there really represents the amount of time for development and then the release at the end of the bar for web enable. The next phase would be to be their first SaaS product that has some architectural considerations, and so this would be more level 2, and this application would be multi-tenant aware, would have some functional enhancements, have a partitionable user interface for the different users, a separate database for each user, for each tenant, and load testing was done to make sure that it was running well. So you can see that that's actually a very small piece that needed to be done on top of the web enable. The next phase would be what we call true SaaS, where you'd have a multi-tenant database, tenant-aware administration tool, migration tools, again, more functional enhancements, but still set up by professional services, just as they said they would be okay doing in one of their releases. So now we've already had 3 releases planned here, and then the fourth, which is really the fully SaaS product, would be where they would really completely migrate all the technology to Microsoft and be one full Microsoft SaaS solution, where the business objects, the data access objects would be all .NET, all the complete services, Active Directory, and this would be truly the level 4 maturity SaaS product. And finally, the one thing to note here on this is that we did realize that this was a larger development piece, so they needed to start that in parallel with starting back when phase 1 was being done, and even through phase 2 and phase 3 in order to get this done in a timely manner. So this was all, represented parallel development. And finally, we defined an optional phase, which they didn't really need to get to, but if they wanted to, which is really extreme scalability, where they could possibly refactor those data access objects for much higher scalability, kind of depending on what they really needed. So this is the final look at what the 5 phases to SaaS, and what it would take for them to really evolve from where they were today to a completely new SaaS product. So what have been some of the key lessons that we've learned with our clients, the different ones that we've dealt with? First of all, that moving to on-demand is much more than a technology change. As we've talked to our clients and they want to say, I want to move to SaaS, and we start asking some of the reasons as to why and what's driving it, and they can't tell us that, then we realize if they can't tell us that, we can't help them design a product. And so the companies have to really realize that got to think through all those business objectives and all the different things that affect what you really want to be doing as you move to on-demand. The other thing that we have seen with our clients is moving to on-demand takes longer than the companies first expect. And so one of the things, an example I like to give there is that we had a client that they started out evolving. They felt like we're going to evolve, and so they asked us to help them with the evolution. And as we started going down the line and asking about, well, what is this product going to look like, what what we realized is they really didn't understand what they needed for the product. And after they started determining what they needed, they really realized they needed a completely new look and feel, a whole different set of functionality, because they were targeting a completely different target market. And so with that, we ended up doing a completely brand new development for a brand new product. So this was one where because they didn't think it through, it was, they changed their strategies, and of course it did take a lot longer. But even some of the ones that think through the business objectives, what we found is it just does take longer. And because it takes longer, then it really becomes apparent that it's important to keep the current product roadmap going, and has to be in parallel, and you really have to be doing something with your current product roadmap, which means you really do have two sets of development going on in parallel. So that's one thing has to be planned for, has to be budgeted for, and all taken into account. The other thing is, it is okay to consider evolving through the SaaS maturity levels. It doesn't have to be the big bang to complete scalability and multi-tenancy, because there are ways to move forward that help you go ahead and release something that's new to your product, to your target market, and continue to evolve. So that is a consideration that everyone should think about. The other thing is, there have been companies that have done this now. There are service providers like ourselves, and you're not alone, so you really need to leverage those experiences of other ISVs and other ISV service providers. So, go through and summarize what the key SaaS enablement steps are. First of all, identify your business objectives. Make sure you really understand who you're targeting, what all of the process changes possibly that are needed in your business, and that's the first key thing. If you don't understand that, the rest of it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. The next thing is, are you going to outsource any of this because of possibly resource needs that you may have? So you need to think about that and how you find the right partner. Thirdly, you need to develop your high-level product roadmap. What exactly do you want to release? And short of doing the big bang, what new features do you need, and in what order do you need them, the priorities? Next is determining the technology approach and the software architecture. And with that comes, you need to do an assessment of your current product to find out its suitability for moving to SaaS. And I'm not saying that you just necessarily decide you throw it away, or even if you think it's not totally suitable. At least understand what's there, because there may be some business logic, the code in there that you can use. But how suitable is that for moving forward, and how much of it can you leverage? Then you have to look at all the key technologies that you want to use, all the architecture considerations. You need to then develop your overall project plan, including what you're going to do with infrastructure. Are there going to be phases of your product delivery, and what resources to schedule? How is this going to be tested? And particularly, how are you going to test performance and load testing, given that this will be a SaaS product? And finally, you need to do a plan and provide support for your existing products. So, I've said that many times because it really is important. You cannot leave your existing customers in the lurch while you're moving forward with the future. So, that's the end of my presentation. Just a short blurb about who we are at Agile Solutions. As Michelle said, we are the leading provider of software development services for companies in the business of building software products. And in particular, we do expert consulting for our ISV customers and software development and testing. And one of our main areas of focus at this point is helping companies move their on-demand products to their on-premise products to be on-demand products. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Shlomo, and he can talk about Tenets.
Great. Thanks, Eileen. I found it really a great overview of what an ISV needs to consider when moving from on-premise to cloud delivery. And found it interesting also because we're at SafeNet, we're working with a lot of ISVs to help them make that transition as well. We've been providing ISVs and helping ISVs monetize their software for over 25 years. And we have 15,000 customers that are on-premise software vendors. Many of them who are making that move to the cloud, and they come to us and asking them to help them with similar value and benefits that we're helping them on-premise software delivery in the cloud as well. So just over the next couple of slides, I'm going to cover a little bit of what we've been hearing from the companies we're working with, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Michelle. So we come from a background of, like I said, helping ISVs monetize their software by delivering them technologies and tools to help them license and manage their entitlements. When it comes to the cloud, we've been working with our customers, and we ourselves, truthfully, because we also made that transition going from on-premise to launching a cloud product earlier this year. We've heard a number of different challenges that have come up across different customers that we've been working with. One of those challenges is how do they ensure that when they're delivering their services, their customers are using the service according to their contract that they have in place. So making sure that they have the control in place, that their customers are only accessing either the functions and features that they're supposed to be accessing, or that they're limiting to the number of users or the types of packages that they've sold. One company we work with actually indicated that when they first went into the cloud, they did not have a way to control the access to their service. And when they went ahead and actually did a physical audit of their customers, they found that 85% were non-compliant. So it took them until they were able to implement a system in order to help them prevent that. They were really giving away a lot of their service for free. Another area is in terms of what we call product versatility. So often when a company goes out and enters into the cloud, launches in the cloud, they start with a pretty basic single package that they're offering. But they quickly realize that both for competitive reasons, but more importantly because their customer is asking for it, they need to be able to offer different flavors of their product. Whether it's to a flavor for small users, up to a mid-sized enterprise possibly, or all the way to a large customer. And so often they don't have the tools in place in order to be able to make those adjustments quickly. They usually have to go in and hard code whatever changes they want to make, instead of having the ability to go and on the fly offer new packages and solutions to their customers. And that ties in then to the business agility as well. Do they have the flexibility in place in their company in order to adapt to the changing needs of the market, especially in the cloud, which is a fast-moving business. Similar to that, companies what we've seen are generally offering a standard subscription when they first enter the cloud, but then realize that there are new ways that they can monetize their software. For example, if they want to be able to license according to usage, do they have the tools in place in order to be able to track that usage and then license according to it? And so there are many different sophisticated business models, and some of them are even a combination of several models. So we've got companies we work with that offer a base subscription for most of their functions, but then specific features they want to also be able to offer a usage-based model for. And so they typically don't have those capabilities in place. One company that we've worked with, they said that from the time that they want to decide to offer a new license and a new package, based on existing features, it takes them over 9 months in order to get it to market, because they don't have the tools in place in order to separate those business decisions from the engineering process. Which leads into the next phase in terms of business intelligence. Once they're collecting all that usage, they should be able to leverage that in order to understand their business, understand what their customers are using within their products, understand where to invest their resources and where to de-invest. But often it seems that they should be able to get all that usage data because it's a cloud service, but they often don't have the systems in place in order to collect, aggregate, and then use that information properly. And finally, back office support, and this is especially complex for a company that is transitioning from on-premise to the cloud. Most companies are not leaving their on-premise business behind. They're continuing to sell just like they have been for years in an on-premise delivery, but they're also adding this cloud delivery. So then they run into complexities of, well, can they have a single system in order to help them manage all of both sides of their business, whether it's on the cloud or on-premise? How do they manage their licensing across both of these types of delivery mechanisms? And so it could be quite complex if they don't really have the systems as well as the business processes in place in order to support their business as a single business as opposed to having it run as two separate entities. Which takes me to the solution that I mentioned that SafeNet launched earlier this year, Sentinel Cloud Services, which is a cloud service itself, in order to help ISVs that are delivering their service within the cloud manage their licensing and entitlements. So everything from the first phase of defining the service catalog and licenses that they want to offer to their customers, through tools that that can be easily accessed and used by anyone, whether it's a product manager, a marketing person, a salesperson, in order to define which packages they want to offer on the fly. Once those packages have been defined and including the licensing terms, and then the user signs up, well, the next stage is to provision them to make sure that as they sign up, the specific packages that they have subscribed to are available to them, and that they are only using those packages that they're supposed to be using. So with Sentinel Cloud Services, that includes the automated tools in order to provision the new users and the contract terms. Once the customer or the user is using the system, then Sentinel Cloud also helps the ISV control what part of the service they're actually using. So they might limit whether it's for a trial or whether it's for different types of packages that they've offered. They might limit different types of users to different types of functions and features that they're entitled to use within their system. The next phase, once they're using the system and they're going through and they've been enjoying the use of that application, the ISV in the background using Sentinel Cloud can easily collect all of the usage information, all the way down to the granularity of the feature level, to see what their customers are using. And this gives the ISV the tools to either, from a product management perspective, know which parts of the solution of their services are being used and which are not. It could give them insight into who's using the service, and therefore, if they have an opportunity for upsell or to move a customer from a trial over to a paid subscription or paid license. And so they can really leverage this information to help their business, and then finally to adapt their business. And as you see, it's a circle here because they can adapt and define new models based on what they've learned through that intelligence gathering. And so Sentinel Cloud provides the tools to an ISV that's moving into the cloud or to a pure play SaaS company to really help them monetize their solution initially, but also give them the flexibility to grow their business in the future. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Michelle.
Thanks, Shlomo. I just want to take this opportunity before jumping into Q&A to just remind everyone that this is one of a series of 5 events on various topics for helping software publishers achieve success in the cloud. The next event is taking place on Thursday, November 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It features presentations from SafeNet and Zuora on the software monetization lifecycle. Now let's open the floor to our audience to address your questions. I'd just like to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask one of our presenters a question, please click the Submit the Questions button now on your screen, or you can submit a question via social media by using the Twitter handle LDIPTC, short for Let's Do It in the Cloud. First question I think goes to you, Eileen. You mentioned the need to look into licensing and billing. From your experience working with on-premise folks transitioning to the cloud, what license models do you see them being most successful with?
Well, first of all, the ones we've seen the most are transaction-based. But honestly, when we first start working with the clients, they don't have a lot of knowledge about what the options are to them for licensing. They're not really thinking about some of the things that they could possibly do. And so that's a key area where most of them still need to learn how to plan better and be able to bring in people, possibly like yourselves, to really help them think all of that through.
Great. So I think there's a couple of questions around timing. I know that in one of your slides that you kind of slated migration or evolution to take about 4 years from start to finish. The question is, with full attention, prioritization, and budget, how much can that timeline be accelerated, if at all, in an evolution scenario?
Yeah, those timelines can always be accelerated. Most of the time it's budget. okay, and so they can always be accelerated, and even some of the phases can be put together so that they are done all at earlier times. So, but the one that we showed you in our case study, this was mainly all around budget and how much that they felt that they could do in parallel. So things can be moved forward.
Great. And kind of on a similar vein, there was a question about with that it taking much longer than your clients usually anticipate. Are there any specific areas of rollout that you see your clients repeatedly underestimating?
Yeah, I think the big underestimation that we see to begin with is not really understanding what they really want to put in this new product, and so it's as we go through, and we usually do these things in agile development, and so we're looking at each sprint what needs to go in, and what we're seeing is just a lot of changes and thinking going on, and so it's clearly that they're really aren't understanding what they want to do, and so it's very agile, it's very flexible, and so things just take longer. They realize there are more things that they want in that product than they thought to begin with.
That's brilliant. In your line of business, you speak to a lot of SaaS providers in the midst of figuring out how to bring their service to market. In these conversations, what would you say are the biggest or most common "I should have done X differently" is that you find?
I think some of them are, again, thinking through, the main thing is thinking through what is it that they really want to do, being much more clear about their target market for their SaaS product. And we've, despite the fact that we tell people worry about your current product, a number of them don't. And so then they realize, oh, it's now taking longer, I'm screwed, essentially, okay? And then the other thing that people don't look at soon enough, I think, are really understanding the financial implications. How should they make money? How should they license? How should they do all of that? And the last thing is infrastructure implications. And so we try to help them, certainly, around pointing them to the right partners for infrastructure, but also getting them to understand what it's going to take to make sure the infrastructure performs the way they need it.
So what would you say in your interactions with your clients have been the key business drivers for companies actually moving to SaaS? What is that tipping point, that final thing that says, all right, I have to do this, we have to do it. It's no longer a future, it's now.
Yeah, some of those have been people realizing that they need to expand their market. And so, and most of them going to a smaller market. So they realize that their price point has to change. And so that's a real key. The price point has to change in the way they see it as SaaS. The other thing is there's a lot of competitive pressure these days. Everything's going SaaS. And, I have to say that there's a lot of companies who haven't gone with SaaS products, but the people think that that's where everybody is going. And so a lot of competitive pressure. And then because of that competitive pressure, people are wanting to be first in their market with SaaS. They want to say, we got there first, and we're offering the best price points, the best flexibility. But again, it really comes down to price points and being able to sell in the markets they want to sell to.
So that's the end of the questions that we have actually coming in from the live feed. I'll give it another second here while we wrap up to see if any additional questions come in. If there are any questions that come up, after we leave the webinar or whilst you're reviewing the replay, anybody at the SafeNet and at the Agilist side can be reached by using the Let's Do It in the Cloud hashtag on social media, or by reaching out to Eileen with the contact information that she provided in that last slide of her presentation, as well as by emailing staff@safenet-inc.com. Any one of those places we can route your questions to the right direction to make sure you get the answers now and moving forward. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this and all of the presentations in the Let's Do It in the Cloud webinar series are available on demand immediately after the presentation is concluded. All you have to do is visit our Bright Talk channel. It's called Licensing Live. Everything is there. You can share it with your colleagues and friends. So with that, it doesn't look like any additional questions are coming in. I'd like to thank everyone for joining and enjoy the rest of your day.